Ever felt like you're just faking it? Like any moment someone's going to expose you as a fraud? You're not alone. That gut-wrenching feeling of not being good enough, despite all your achievements, has a name: Impostor Syndrome. But what if I told you there are concrete ways to silence that inner critic and truly own your success? Impostor Syndrome is not mere humility or ordinary insecurity. It's a pattern of thought that disconnects the evidence of your ability from the belief in your ability. The smarter you are, the worse it gets, because dumb people don't know they're dumb. That's literally a psychological phenomenon called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people with low ability overestimate their competence. Meanwhile, the highly capable people, they underestimate theirs. It's like the universe decided to prank us all. You can have credentials, results, praise, and still feel undeserving. That disconnect is what traps people in cycles of overwork, anxiety, and avoidance. This voice, this internal imposter, does not speak loudly. It rarely shouts. It is subtle, persistent, and particularly convincing in moments when you should feel proud. Instead of allowing rest, it rewrites wins as flukes and competence as coincidence. It keeps you waiting for the moment of exposure, even as you collect proof that you belong. It's important to recognize that imposter feelings do not mark incompetence. Many who experience them are high performers who care deeply about their work. The problem is not talent. It is the interpretive pattern that refuses to accept success as legitimate. Where does this come from? Imposter feelings grow from a blend of early experiences, cultural messages, internalized expectations, and the environments we inhabit. Maybe you were praised primarily for being smart rather than for effort. Perhaps you were raised in a context of comparison, where achievements were measured against others. High-pressure cultures that require perfection prime people to believe any imperfection is existential failure. Even the nature of expertise itself contributes. The more you learn, the more you see what you do not know. Awareness of complexity can be healthy humility, until humility becomes self-attack. Understanding the mechanics helps. At a cognitive level, imposter thinking contains predictable distortions: discounting success, magnifying mistakes, selective memory, and catastrophic predictions. You remember one criticism more clearly than a dozen compliments. You attribute success to luck and failure to character. These distortions form a loop. The cycle is familiar. You receive an opportunity and either over-prepare to avoid being found out, or you avoid stepping forward altogether. You perform, sometimes excellently, and the inner narrative rewrites that success as an exception. Next time, you set a higher standard or withdraw. Over time, both reactions narrow your life. What is the cost? It is quieter than dramatic failure, but equally corrosive. People delay applications, decline promotions, avoid public speaking, and say no to opportunities that would expand their influence. Some adopt overwork as a safety behavior, believing endless effort will legitimize them, which leads to exhaustion and diminished creativity. Others withdraw into safer roles to avoid exposure. Psychologically, chronic anxiety, shame, and diminished self-trust follow. When you cannot internalize your achievements, external validation becomes the temporary currency that never fully repairs the underlying belief that you're an accident waiting to be revealed. How do you move from feeling fraudulent to owning your work and your growth? There is no single trick. This is recalibration of habit and perspective. Here are practical, concrete steps drawn from cognitive and behavioral practices and reflective exercises that can rewire the pattern over time. Name the voice. Recognize the thought when it appears. When your first reaction to success is doubt, say to yourself, "That is imposter thinking." Labeling reduces the emotional intensity and creates distance. It turns a reflex into an object you can examine. Gather objective evidence. Create a system for preserving proof of competence. Emails, notes, milestones, client feedback, performance results. Maintain a file, digital or physical, where each achievement is logged with context: what you did, the outcome, and who acknowledged it. When doubt surfaces, consult the file. Cognitive distortions thrive on faulty memory. Documentation corrects that. Reframe attribution. Imposter thinking attributes success primarily to external factors, luck, timing, or help, while attributing failure to personal deficit. Practice balanced attribution. Acknowledge external influences, but also name your role, the choices you made, the preparation you did, the skills you applied. "I was lucky" can coexist with "I also worked strategically and learned to execute." Both can be true. Normalize uncertainty. Expertise is not omniscience. Even leaders, specialists, and teachers face unanswered questions. Define competence as the ability to learn and adapt rather than a state of omnipotence. When you see competence as a process, curiosity, recovery from mistakes, consistent effort, the pressure to be flawless decreases. Small, controlled exposures. If fear of exposure keeps you from stepping forward, practice in manageable ways. Present a short update in a small meeting. Mentor for an hour. Apply for one position that feels slightly beyond your comfort zone. Each controlled exposure provides corrective experience. You try, you learn, and the gap between feared outcomes and real outcomes narrows. Stop the overwork loop. Overworking is a safety behavior. If I work more, I will be less likely to be exposed. But exhaustion undermines performance and reinforces doubt. Monitor your habits, set boundaries, and prioritize impact over exhaustive perfectionism. Good enough, executed with clarity and timeliness, often trumps perfect that never ships. Cultivate honest conversations. Isolation magnifies imposter feelings. When you disclose the experience to a trusted peer, mentor, or colleague, the feeling often dissolves because you discover others share it. These conversations create perspective, community, and accountability, and they normalize the experience. Seek professional support when necessary. For entrenched patterns, psychotherapy or coaching accelerates change. Cognitive approaches help you examine and restructure the habitual thoughts that maintain imposter beliefs. Coaching can provide accountability and practical experiments that challenge assumptions. Therapy is not only for crisis, it is a structured tool for sustainable change. Redefine metrics of success. Shift metrics from single outcomes to process markers. Clarity of intent, courage to try, consistency of effort, and capacity to learn. When your identity is anchored in process rather than isolated results, your sense of worth becomes more stable. Practice self-compassion. Change takes time. The inner critic will not disappear overnight. Respond to doubt with the same kindness you would offer someone you care about. When the voice is intolerant, ask, "What would I say to a close friend in this situation?" Then practice directing that language inward. Consider the environments that shape you. Imposter feelings are not solely personal. They are also structural. Teams and organizations that reward flawless performance over learning, that lack mentorship, or that fuel comparison will sustain imposter dynamics. If your environment consistently invalidates your competence, it may be necessary to seek roles that offer psychological safety, constructive feedback, and genuine development opportunities. Here are 2 short, practical exercises you can use regularly. Weekly evidence review. 10 to 15 minutes. Choose a consistent time each week to open your achievement file. Read entries aloud. For each item, identify the objective result, the skills you applied, and one lesson learned. Add one new entry for something you accomplished that week. Over months, this practice creates a ledger of competence accessible during moments of doubt. Compassionate challenge. 5 minutes. When a self-critical thought appears, write it down. Then write a counter-statement that is factual and kind. Replace, "I only got this job because they hired someone, anyone," with, "I applied, interviewed, and demonstrated relevant skills. The hiring panel selected me based on evidence." Repeating this practice makes the counter-statement more automatic. Beyond personal practice, language and modeling matter. Leaders and mentors who openly discuss their learning curves, credit teams, and normalize setbacks reduce the shame that fuels imposter thinking. When you tell the story of work, with mistakes and corrections included, you change the cultural expectation that success must appear effortless. When you receive feedback, treat it as data, not destiny. Ask clarifying questions. Request examples. Store praise and constructive notes together in your evidence file. Learn to accept compliments briefly. A simple "thank you" rather than reflexively minimizing them. Small acceptance trains the mind to receive truth. If you mentor others, listen for imposter narratives and name them. Help mentees document moments of competence. Encouraging others to externalize their accomplishments strengthens your own habit of recognizing achievement. Measure progress by action, not emotion. The goal is not the absence of doubt, but a pattern of choosing meaningful action despite it. Track decisions you make that align with your values, rather than waiting to feel ready. Over time, those choices accumulate into a life that reflects your competence. It helps to reframe the inner critic entirely. Rather than aiming to silence doubt, consider retraining the voice. When the critic says you're not qualified, reply with a calibrated statement. I may not know everything yet, but I can learn what's necessary and ask for support. Name the critic if that helps. Giving it a benign, even humorous label can reduce its authority. Remember, confidence is not the elimination of fear. Confidence is the practice of acting in spite of fear, grounded in evidence and guided by purpose. Many people who changed the world carried doubts alongside their drive. The difference was not the absence of doubt, but the structure they used to make decisions in its presence. This is intentional, steady work. It calls for honesty, routine, and small daily acts that build a new default. The recalibration is not vanity. It is survival, the survival of your potential, your voice, and your commitment to growth. You did not arrive where you are by accident. Your presence in your role, your achievements, and your relationships are results of action, learning, and resilience. It is natural to question yourself, but it is not inevitable that self-questioning defines you. With deliberate practices, naming the voice, recording evidence, reframing attribution, practicing exposure, and engaging honest conversation, you can reshape how you relate to success and failure. Let your next step be an act of informed courage. Apply for the role. Speak up in the meeting, accept a challenge, or share these ideas with someone who needs them. Doubt may come and go, but it does not get to decide whether you show up. You belong here. Your achievements belong to you. You don't need to prove that you belong. You already do. You're just catching up to the version of yourself that knows it.